welcome back to the class, everyone. It is that time of the year again. We are quickly approaching Galaxy of Heroes anniversary, and in very typical Galaxy of Heroes anniversary fashion, we've got double drops coming. So I'm sure many of you are currently asking, before we even get into the math here, where is this information coming from? There's nothing currently posted on the official forums about this, and we're not just actually assuming that this is coming. Rather, this is where we are getting this information from, or rather, the screenshot is where we're getting the information from. And this has been taken from Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes Events Discord server, where they will typically do a lot of the data mines, where they'll go through all the updates, scrape all the data, and find useful things. This happens to just be one of the things they found very recently, and it is good. Not every single time that we get double drops are they this inclusive where we're going to be getting them on everything. Sometimes it's just hard nodes, sometimes it's just mod or fleet. This time it's literally everything. So the event is going to be starting the 23rd and going to be ending the 28th. And like I said, it includes light side battles, dark side battles, cantina, mod, and fleet battles. It doesn't include Galactic Legend tickets. You don't get double that, but this is still even really nice if you are on a Galactic Legend farm right now, because you're more encouraged to spend more energy. And when you do that, you end up getting tickets, even if they aren't at double the rate. So shout out to Galaxy of Heroes events. That's where we get kind of all this information to begin with. So now looking back at our charts, before we jump into all the math of why you should hoard, how you should hoard, and even if you should do the hundreds, because we're getting this information kind of late, I do want to go over a quick refresher of why this is so important as a hyper efficiency in the game. One of the most important things about the game is that it is a resource management game. And with that being said, the best bang for your buck when it comes to using your free to play or pay to play crystals, doesn't really matter, is by refreshing your energy. Now, I realize not everyone has a free to play income to be able to get a ton of crystals to be able to do the main 3 every day, but we should be doing them to some degree. And really, when we want to cash in on all of these is during these specific double drop events, because the crystal refreshes don't increase in price, but the drops do. So again, typically you want to be doing the 50 crystal refreshes here on fleet, on mod, and on normal energy, as well as the 100 crystal refreshes on the canteen energy. You can only do it 3 times a day in total. So once you do that, you typically just leave it, because there's typically other places in game with better value once you pass that point. So you want to be doing all 3. Now, coming more specifically to double drops, what we're trying to leverage here is the fact that that energy is going to have more value if we hoard it and use it specifically during the double drops, rather than using it immediately several days before and not capping out. And that is one of most people's biggest fears, is why in the world would I hoard my energy here where it gets stuck at 144 or 200 or whatever it is, and I don't naturally accrue it? And the reason why is because the math says that we can do this. When you hoard energy, you are going to lose that naturally accruing energy that happens throughout the day. Typically, you get about 240 in the normal fleet and mod energy throughout the day, and 120 in cantina. We're not going to be getting that, but it's okay, because the amount of hoarded energy that we do have from doing those 3 crystal refreshes, as well as the bonus energy we can get also throughout the day, we are having a higher net gain, because when we hit it during the double drops, it's worth double. So it's worth sacrificing the 240 or the 120 energy to be able to use it in its double form, yielding in more energy and a overall better crystal value. If you want to check the math, I mean, that's kind of all written out there. This is the formula that I have using for it right now, that it's comparing it to 100 crystal refreshes, which is what you would have to use to be able to hit that value. And even if you want to cut it in half, it's still a net positive of 100 or 70 or whatever these ultimately end up being. Now, that being said, there are some other concerns with hoarding your energy outside of just pure value. The biggest one that I typically hear about is raid tickets. Typically, your guild is going to want you to get your 600 tickets daily, and that is gotten by spending energy. Now, if you're an officer and you're like telling your guild what they can and can't do, or you're just trying to be a specific type of guildmate and you don't want your guild to get less raids in general, because that's also not great value, sacrifice normal. Do your normal refreshes during the day, spend the energy, call it a day. But I kind of implore you, from a value perspective, do not do this with Cantina. Hoard your Cantina. And the reason why you want to do it with Cantina instead of normal, number one, you have more normal energy during the day to be able to use to go towards that 600. In fact, you can do it quite easily without even ever touching Cantina, which can also be used toward it. But even more than that, because Cantina is typically a more expensive refresh, you're going to be getting a better value by hoarding it because it in general is just worth more. You're going to be getting a 237 crystal value instead of a 212 because of how we are doing this. Now, I should say, and this wasn't mentioned yet, but these do have limits. So you couldn't have started doing this 2 weeks ago. There is a specific time we need to start, and it is actually today. Typically, we get this information a little bit earlier, but it is what it is. I'm not going to really cry over spilled milk right now. So if you want to do raid tickets, that's fine. Do your normal energy, but hoard your Cantina, and then hoard your fleet and mod again if you have the crystal income as well. The other thing that is quite often a comment or concern when we're talking about hoarding is if you stop doing your hard node farms, you're going to start to lose value there as well, assuming you can't wait the 3 or 4 extra days to actually farm them. What I mean by this is, when you have a hard node farm and you go in here, you have a limit of being able to do it only 5 times in total throughout the day. So every single day that you're hoarding, you're not able to do this, and you can't just immediately catch up on this because they have a limit of 5 per day. The good news, or yeah, I guess the good news on this is with the amount of crystals you're making back, you can actually buy refreshes and still come out at a net positive, but there is a breakpoint. What I mean by that is you can only buy so many of these refreshes so many times before it ends up not being a net positive value and you end up with a net negative. The magic number for that is 4 or 5. So if you have 4 hard node farms, you're okay to hoard, it's great. If you have 5 or more, you really don't want to be hoarding unless you're okay with taking that 3 or 4 day hit, depending on what characters you're farming. That can vary a little bit. And where we get that number from is if we're assuming you can only ever do 50 crystal refreshes, you're really only getting about 106 crystal value here. If you're having to refresh 4 different nodes, they each cost 25 to be able to catch up to where you were, and you only end up you actually end up 6 crystals ahead. But again, if you have 5 or more, you're going to be at a net negative. So for those of you who have hard nodes and you really don't want to wait on them for more time, if you have 5 or more, don't do this. If you're willing to wait, then it kind of doesn't really matter. So the ultimate conclusion that we have of why you should hoard is that you should at least hoard Cantina at a minimum because of the value it brings by getting to use it at double. Mod and fleet is probably a pretty good idea. And the normal energy can be good, but it does come with some consequences like raid tickets and hard nodes, depending on where you and your guild are at. Now that we've kind of already discussed why you should be doing this and you can start considering it, we need to talk about how you should be doing it. So, like I previously said, you can only hoard up to a certain amount of energy. So we don't want to start, weeks ago, and I guess we can't go back in time, so that's impossible to begin with. But there are specific target dates we want to hit. So if the max amount of energy you can hoard is 1,119, then we want to hit that on the night of November 22nd, because as soon as November 23rd gets here, we want to be able to immediately spend it. You don't want to be hoarding on that day. You want to be actually using the energy. So that means the night before, you need to be hitting kind of these magic numbers. And for anyone asking why it's this really weird and obscure number, it's technically not. The actual max for normal energy is 2,000, and then the bottom ones are 1,000. But you can kind of cheat the system by getting up to like 999 of this fleet energy and then buying one more refresh, and then it'll immediately hit you to this specific number because you get 120 every single time. So that's kind of why this math looks the way that it does. And that means if we want to hit these numbers on the 22nd, we need to be hitting these numbers on the 21st, because the way that we get to these numbers is by doing those 3 crystal refreshes every day for good value, hoarding it away, and getting to this max. So that means realistically, we need to start on the 20th, which is today, depending on when your reset time is, and this is all based on reset. So I apologize if you're seeing this too late. I made the video really as fast as I could. The information also got to us late. It is what it is. Let's deal with it and try to make the best of it. So for these 3 energies, you really want to start the 20th. The 19th, for the vast majority of people watching this right now, is already gone, so we can kind of forget about that. But it does present a new opportunity that we can take advantage, and that is using the 100 crystal refreshes. So as previously mentioned, after you do the 50 crystal refreshes, you can then pass on to the 100s. And it comes out that while it's not as great of a deal as doing the 50s is, the hundreds are still a pretty good deal. When we come over to this part of the graph, this actually feels really stupid to put these numbers in here, but I thought it was important. If you're spending 300 crystals a day doing those 3 refreshes to get 360, you're not losing any accruing energy because you're already losing that by doing the 50s here, and you don't end up losing anymore. You've already accrued, you've already capped out, you can't lose anymore. So you're just completely hoarding and getting a net gain of 360 energy over time. And this ultimately is great because that 360 energy is now going to be used for double what it could be used at for before. So if we're assuming that you are doing your 50 crystal refreshes every single day, getting to use 100 crystal refreshes at double the drop rate is the exact same thing. So it's not this huge major advantage that you're going to get because double drops are happening, but it's the same value as you would get by doing it every single day. And if there were 5 or 6 50 crystal refreshes every single day, I would do it every single time, but there aren't, so we have to take advantage of the specific scenarios like this. So ultimately, the conclusion with should you do the 100s, they're acceptable, but they're not amazing. They're the same as you doing your 50 crystal refreshes today or tomorrow or whatever normal day out there. They can be good, but they're not this like amazing transcendent value that everyone must do or your account will never be the same. So with all that taken into consideration, I do want to finally address one thing, and that is dailies. While we are doing the hoarding, there are still daily activities going, and those daily activities do have crystals within themselves, and I personally prefer not to forgo them. So what I've done here is I've kind of mapped out how much energy I'll be spending per day, kind of like, I don't know, trying to do like a low carb thing, but with energy, where we're not completely zeroing out, but we're only letting in the exact amount that we need to be able to hit your dailies. Now, depending on your account, your hard nodes, what you're doing, this is going to be different for everyone. And if this was already too complicated, just hit the magic numbers up top. Like that's what we've typically told people before. Don't worry about it. You don't have to drop an Excel spreadsheet. Just come back to this video on the night of the 20th, 21st, 22nd. Make sure you're hitting your numbers or take a screenshot. I don't care. And call it a day. But if you are wanting to be more exact with dailies, you're going to have to do something like this, where I'm wanting to have at least 36 energy per day or using 36 energy per day, so that I can hit my dailies by hitting those 6 battles of light side or dark side energy. I have 24 to be able to hit 3 fleet battles, 60 to hit mod energy. And the reason why we're using 60 energy to hit mod energy is because our mod battles can actually count as hard battles as well, and that allows us to save more of our normal energy because you can get it at a pretty cheap cost. And mod hard battles are very good, whereas right now my account is in a really weird position for the first time ever, where I actually don't have a single hard node that I'm working on, so I really wouldn't even want to do that with normal energy. So this is going to be dependent on your account and what you're currently going after, but I wanted to use this as an example for people to see that you can do the whole hoarding thing, and on top of that, still be able to get your dailies done. Now, what this actually looks like practically, let's take fleet energy for example, because it's pretty simple. The day before, you're going to want to take the top numbers and just add in whatever the amount of energy you need for that one day. But as you continue to go back, you're going to need double that energy. So on the 21st, I only need 24 energy because I'm saving for the 22nd. But rather, on the 20th, I need 48 for both the 21st and the 22nd. Again, I realize that's a little bit complicated. It's also, again, very much a hyper efficiency that not everyone has to do. At the end of the day, just try to hit these numbers as best you can, hit your dailies as you like, and you won't come out to these really nice perfect numbers. But I mean, if you're coming out with 2,000 or 1,900 or 1,800 or whatever, that's honestly fine. You're gonna get some value out of this, and you're not gonna really hurt yourself. So that is going to be pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I realize I've expanded on this data quite a bit over time as things have gone on, trying to include everybody's concerns as everybody has a different roster and might even play the game in a different way. But until the next time, thank you guys for watching, and as always, stay awesome.